He bought the apartment next to mine, he fixed my sink, read to my son, and brought me soup when I was too sick to stand. I didn't know he was a billionaire, I didn't even know his real name, but by the time I found out, it was too late, I was already in love with him. I don't usually talk about this story, not because I'm ashamed, but because it still doesn't feel real sometimes. If you've ever struggled to survive, if you've ever been a single parent, or if you've ever fallen in love with someone who changed your whole damn world without even trying, then you'll understand why I have to tell it like this. From the beginning. No filters, just how it happened. When we moved into that apartment, I wasn't expecting anything more than a roof that didn't leak and a lock that worked. I'd lowered my standards by then. The building smelled like old carpet and fried onions. Jamie hated the elevator, so we took the stairs. 4 flights up, me carrying our only suitcase, him dragging his stuffed dinosaur, one step at a time like it was Mount Everest. Apartment 4C, our new home, I use that word loosely. The kitchen faucet dripped, the heater made a sound like it was gasping for air, and the bathroom door didn't close all the way unless you kicked it, but it was cheap, and it was ours, for now. Jamie didn't complain, he sat on the floor, tracing the cracks in the tile like they were treasure maps. I remember watching him and thinking, please let this be the last place we have to run to. I didn't notice the guy across the hall at first, just a pair of boots outside the door, big, heavy-duty ones, like he worked in construction or something. Quiet, no music, no yelling, just the occasional sound of footsteps at night. The first time I heard from him, really heard from him, was 2 nights later. The sink pipe under our kitchen started spraying like it was trying to drown us. I panicked, grabbed towels, shoved Jamie into the other room, and tried to shut the water off, and then, a knock on the door. I opened it, soaking wet, holding a wrench I didn't know how to use, and there he was. Tall, quiet, gray hoodie, dark eyes that didn't stare too long but somehow saw everything. Need help? He asked. 3 words, that's how it started. Not with a kiss, not with flowers, just a broken pipe and a stranger with strong hands and a calm voice. After he fixed the sink, I didn't even get his name, he didn't ask for anything, just dried his hands on a rag from under the sink, nodded once, and walked back across the hall like he'd just done me the smallest favor in the world. But I couldn't stop thinking about his hands, not in a weird way, okay, maybe a little weird, but mostly because they were steady, confident. He didn't even hesitate. While I was losing my mind over a flood in the kitchen, he just crouched down and turned off the water like it was nothing. That kind of calm. You don't fake that. The next morning, I peeked out into the hall, half expecting him to be gone. The boots were still there, same spot, neatly aligned under the doorframe of apartment 4D. Still no name on the door. Do you think he's a ninja? Jamie asked. I blinked. What? The man who fixed the sink, he's quiet like a ninja, maybe he's hiding. That kid watches way too many cartoons. I shrugged it off. I had more important things to worry about, like whether I could make it to both jobs that day and still have enough energy to cook dinner. Being a single mom is basically playing a game of, what can I afford to let fall apart today? Spoiler, it's usually me. But later that night, I heard him again. It was nearly midnight. Jamie had finally passed out in my bed, curled up like a kitten, and I was on the floor in the living room, trying to tape together a busted windowpane with cardboard and duct tape. I heard the door across the hall creak open, soft steps, a clink, then a drill. A drill, at midnight. I opened the door just a crack and peeked out. There he was, hoodie sleeves pushed up, screwing something into the wall next to the stairwell, quietly, carefully, like he didn't want to wake anyone. I should have said something, maybe, thanks again for the sink, or, it's midnight, right? But I didn't. I just watched him for a minute, long enough to notice the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched like he was holding something in. He didn't see me, or maybe he did, and just didn't care. The next morning, a new handrail had been installed by the stairs, solid wood, not the wobbly death trap that had been there before. There was no note, no brag, no sign that anyone had done it. Except I knew. And for some reason, it made my chest feel warm. Not like butterflies, more like a memory, a feeling I hadn't let myself touch in a long time. Safety. Not the kind that comes with money or locks or alarms, the kind that walks quietly, fixes things, and never asks for thanks. I didn't expect to see him in daylight. People like him, quiet, off-the-grid types, usually kept to shadows and odd hours. I'd convinced myself he was just a night owl with a drill and a god complex, harmless, helpful, weirdly mysterious. But 3 days after the stair rail went up, I ran into him at the front entrance, literally. I was hauling Jamie's stroller down the steps after work, one hand balancing groceries, the other trying to keep the front wheel from catching on a crack in the pavement. I didn't see him coming until I felt the bag rip and a can of soup rolled down the stairs. "Careful," he said, grabbing the bag before it completely exploded. I looked up, breathless. Same guy, hoodie again, scruffy jaw, calm eyes. Close up, he looked even more put together than I expected, not flashy. His clothes were plain, worn, but something about the way he stood, the way he moved, it was practiced, like he knew how to take control of a moment without saying much. He picked up the soup can and held it out to me. "This one's a survivor." I laughed before I could stop myself, just a short, tired laugh, but it was real. "Thanks," I said, tucking it back in the bag. "Sorry, it's been a long day." He nodded, then looked at Jamie, who was half asleep in the stroller, his face smushed into a juice-stained blanket. "Cute kid," he said. I raised an eyebrow. He bit a daycare worker last week for taking his crackers, but sure, let's go with cute. He smiled then. Not a big, flashy grin, just a small, quiet tug at the corner of his mouth, the kind that makes you want to ask, "What are you thinking right now?" We stood there for a second, long enough for it to be almost awkward. Then he opened the door for me and said, "I'm Ethan." That caught me off guard, a name, finally. "Maya," I said. And that was it, no handshake, no weird lingering stares, just two people with too much in their heads and not enough energy to flirt. But when I pushed Jamie's stroller past him, I felt something shift in the air, like a door had been cracked open, not wide, but just enough to let light in. I didn't know it then, but that was the first time he smiled at me. And later, I'd replay that moment 100 times, wondering if he already knew how this would end. A few days later, the air turned bitter. Fall had this way of sneaking up on me. One minute we were sweating through sticky subway rides, and the next, I was layering Jamie's clothes and trying to find where I'd packed the cheap space heater. That night, the heat hadn't kicked in, again. Surprise, surprise, I had Jamie wrapped in 2 old blankets and one of my hoodies, and he still shivered in his sleep. I curled up beside him on the mattress, no bed frame yet, just 2 hand-me-down box springs pushed together, and pulled him close. "Mommy," he mumbled, half asleep, "I'm cold." "I know, baby," I whispered, "I'm trying." He drifted off with his face buried in my shoulder. I lay awake for hours, listening to the wind whistle through a cracked window frame, thinking about jobs, bills, broken heaters, and how every time I fixed one thing, 2 more broke. The next morning, I opened the door to grab the newspaper flyer someone always shoved under it. But there was something else waiting outside. A blanket. Not just any blanket, thick, heavy, soft, the expensive kind, neatly folded, no note, no tag, no explanation. Just sitting there. I looked both ways down the hallway like it might still be warm from the person who left it, but no one was there. The hallway was quiet. Except for one detail. The boots. Still there, apartment 4D. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, blanket in my hands, heart in my throat. I didn't want to assume, maybe it was from Mrs. Donnelly down the hall, maybe it was a building thing, but deep down, I knew. Only one person had a habit of fixing things without a word. I brought it inside, draped it over Jamie, and watched his little body curl into it like he'd just found a piece of heaven. Later, I knocked on his door. Ethan opened it slowly, a little surprised. Same hoodie, same still eyes. "Thank you," I said, "for the blanket." His expression didn't change, but something flickered there, something unreadable. "I didn't want him to be cold," he said, simply. No explanations, no awkwardness, just that. "I didn't say it was from you," I replied. He tilted his head slightly, just enough to register amusement. "You didn't have to." I smiled, for real this time, small, but real. That was the first time I realized he was paying attention, not in a creepy way, not in a watching you kind of way. In a listening kind of way. And I hadn't had anyone listen to me in a long, long time. It was raining. Not just rain, pouring, one of those nights where the water hammers the windows like it's trying to get in, and everything outside feels gray and blurry. Jamie was cranky, overtired. Hungry but refusing every meal I put in front of him. He cried when I turned off the TV and cried when I turned it back on. He missed his old daycare, his old friends. I didn't blame him, I missed things too. By 8 p.m., I was out of patience, out of snacks, and running out of emotional fuel. So I did what every mom does eventually. I gave up and sat with him on the floor, surrounded by cereal crumbs and half-drawn crayon pictures. We watched the one scratched-up DVD we owned for the third time that week. That's when the power went out. Just like that, total darkness. Jamie screamed. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, heart racing. The wind howled outside like some kind of warning. I hugged him tight. It's okay, baby. It's just the lights, we're okay. But the truth was, I wasn't okay. The dark freaked me out, the sudden silence, the cold, the way my mind always went to worst-case scenarios. And then, a knock. Not loud, not panicked, just 3 quiet taps on the door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Ethan stood there holding a flashlight and a black toolbox. His hoodie was soaked, hair dripping. He looked like a ghost stepping out of a rainstorm. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too fast. Yeah, just, total darkness, terrified kid, panic-induced adrenaline rush, the usual. His mouth tugged upward. "Circuit blew. I've got a generator." Of course he did. "Want me to hook it up for you?" he added. I blinked. "Seriously? You just carry a generator around for fun?" He didn't answer, just held up the toolbox like it explained everything. I let him in. He moved through the apartment like he already knew the layout, like he'd memorized every creak in the floor. Jamie peeked out from behind my legs, eyes wide. Ethan knelt beside him and clicked on a tiny flashlight shaped like a dinosaur. It glowed green. "Want to help me be a light fixer?" he asked. Jamie didn't say anything, but he nodded. 10 minutes later, the living room glowed faintly with soft light from a string of battery-powered lanterns Ethan pulled from his bag. The heater stayed off, but the glow was enough to make the apartment feel a little less haunted. "I owe you another thank you," I said quietly, after Jamie had curled up on the couch again. Ethan sat on the floor, back against the wall, damp sleeves rolled up. "You don't owe me anything," he said. We were quiet for a while after that, just sitting there, listening to the rain. Then, out of nowhere, Jamie spoke. "Can we watch a movie?" I sighed. "The TV's not working, baby." Ethan glanced at me, then pulled out his phone and opened a movie app. "I've got a downloaded copy of How to Train Your Dragon," he said. "Kid-friendly?" Jamie's eyes lit up. "Yes." We watched it right there on the floor. Ethan held the phone, Jamie leaned against my side, the 3 of us huddled in a bubble of borrowed light and storm sounds. It wasn't romantic. But it was warm. Safe. Good. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to carry the whole world by myself. The next morning, I found myself staring at the wall between our apartments. It wasn't much, just drywall, peeling paint, and a faint water stain shaped like a question mark, but I couldn't stop thinking about the man on the other side of it. Ethan. Who he was. Why he was here. And more importantly, why he was helping me. The old version of me, before Jamie, before rent notices and food stamps and watching life slip out from under me, she might have believed this was just kindness, good neighbors, a good guy doing good things. But I wasn't her anymore. I'd learned that nothing came without a price, that men like Ethan didn't just show up in lives like mine without a reason. So I did what any emotionally constipated woman would do. I ignored it. I went to work, got yelled at by my supervisor for being too slow on the register, came home. Fed Jamie noodles with ketchup and called it dinner, folded laundry, paid the internet bill 3 days late, survived. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And the thing was, it wasn't bad, it wasn't scary, it was just strange. The way Ethan knew how to fix anything, the way he didn't talk unless he had to, the way he looked at people like he was measuring how much pain they were hiding. Like he understood it. That night, I caught myself standing by the window, staring out at the street. His apartment light was on, the glow seeped under the crack in his door, faint but constant, steady. Just like him. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe some kind of proof that he had a secret life, maybe a glimpse of something that would explain all of it. But there was nothing. Until I heard it. A sound. Barely audible over the old radiator and Jamie's soft breathing. A piano. Not recorded, real, soft, melancholy. It was coming from his apartment. I pressed my ear to the wall and held my breath. The melody wasn't perfect, it hesitated sometimes, like he was remembering it as he played, but it was beautiful, gentle, worn with emotion, like someone had poured everything they couldn't say into every note. And that's when it hit me. He was hiding too. Different kind of pain, different kind of past. But pain, all the same. I sat down on the floor, back against the wall, and closed my eyes. I didn't ask the question that was burning inside me, why are you really here, Ethan? Because somehow, I already knew. We were both just trying to survive the silence. The weirdest things happen on Thursdays. I don't know why, maybe it's because Thursday isn't quite the weekend, but it's tired of being the work week. It's the day weird phone calls come in, the day your kid throws up at daycare, or a stranger leaves a blanket at your door. This Thursday, it was a business card. I found it on the floor outside my door when I came back from picking up Jamie. No envelope, no note. Just a single black business card, so smooth it almost felt like silk. On the front, in tiny embossed letters. Ethan Black. No title. No phone number. No address. Just an email, e@blck.co. That was it. Not handyman, not tech consultant, or freelancer, or piano-playing mystery neighbor, just a name. I turned it over. The back was blank, completely blank. It felt expensive. Not printed at Kinko's, expensive, custom stock, satin matte, private press expensive. I stared at it for a long time. That night, I waited until Jamie was asleep, then knocked on Ethan's door. He opened it like he was expecting me. I held up the card, "You dropped this." He looked at it, then back at me, no expression. "I didn't," he said. "You sure?" "It was right outside my..." "I didn't drop it," he repeated, voice soft, "I left it there." I paused. "Oh." He waited, like he was giving me space to walk away if I wanted. I didn't. "I've been trying to figure out who you are," I said quietly. "You won't," he replied, just as quiet. And that was it. He didn't explain, didn't deflect, just stood there in the doorway like a question I wasn't ready to ask. "I'm not trying to get into your business," I added, suddenly aware of how small I felt. His gaze softened, just a little. "I know," he said, "but eventually, you're going to ask." I nodded, heart pounding. "Will you answer?" He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no, either. Just handed me something else. A small paper bag. "For Jamie," he said. I heard him coughing through the wall. Inside was a bottle of natural children's cough syrup, a plush fox toy, and a note written in the simplest handwriting. "In case he has trouble sleeping." I clutched it against my chest and whispered, "Thank you." He stepped back into the shadows of his apartment. "Get some rest, Maya." And then the door closed. That was the night I realized something dangerous. I was starting to trust him. Saturdays used to mean cartoons and pancakes. Now they meant laundry, errands, and holding Jamie's hand on a bus because I couldn't afford a car. We were headed downtown. His shoes were falling apart again. The thrift store on Lexington sometimes had name brands if you got lucky early. Jamie had just fallen asleep on my shoulder when the bus jerked to a stop at a red light, right across from a glass high-rise. I'd never paid attention to it before, just another shiny box in a city full of them, but something caught my eye this time. Movement. Behind the floor-to-ceiling windows on the 15th floor, 3 people, sharply dressed, suits, ties, sleek ponytails, mid-conversation, one of them stepped forward. I blinked. It was Ethan. But not Ethan. This Ethan wasn't wearing his usual hoodie, he was in a tailored black suit, slim fit, clean lines, collar sharp enough to cut glass, no beanie, no toolbox. His hair was styled, back, clean, businesslike. He wasn't slouching, he wasn't avoiding eye contact. He looked in charge. Like the room belonged to him. Like the building belonged to him. I pressed my forehead to the glass of the bus window, my breath fogged the view. For a second, I thought I imagined it. But then he turned. His gaze scanned the street like he felt something, and for a heartbeat, our eyes met through the layers of glass, distance, and disbelief. He didn't flinch. He just nodded, barely, like he was saying hello across a gulf I hadn't realized existed until that moment. Then the light turned green, the bus moved on, the building disappeared behind us. I didn't say a word for the rest of the ride. That night, after Jamie went to bed, I stood outside Ethan's door for 10 full minutes, just standing. I didn't knock. I didn't know what to say if I did. Because now I had questions. Real ones. Ones I wasn't sure I wanted the answers to. Like, why is the handyman from 4D having meetings in glass towers? Why does he own a custom suit that costs more than my rent? And most of all, why is a man who looks like that, who lives like that, helping someone like me? I didn't sleep. Not really. I tossed, turned, thought about suits and city lights, thought about Ethan's eyes behind 15 stories of glass, about the nod that said, yes, it's me, but I'm not who you think I am. By morning, I'd decided on one thing. I couldn't let it go. So after I dropped Jamie off at daycare, I went straight to his door. I didn't knock politely this time. I knocked like someone who deserved answers. It took him longer than usual to open it. When he did, he looked tired, like he'd been expecting this moment, like he knew the mask had slipped. Hey, he said softly. I held up my phone. On the screen, a blurry photo I'd taken of the high-rise from the bus, one of those, you had to be there, pictures, too fuzzy to prove anything but real enough that I knew the truth. Tell me I'm wrong, I said. He glanced at the photo, then back at me. He didn't even try to deny it. Come in, he said. I stepped inside, heart racing. The apartment was cleaner than usual, too clean, like he'd been preparing for this. Coffee, he offered. No, I said, sharper than I meant, I want to know what's going on. Who are you, Ethan? He looked down at his hands. And then, for the first time since I met him, he told me something real. My last name is Blackwell, he said quietly, not just Black. I froze. That name, it echoed somewhere, from a magazine? A headline? I pulled out my phone again and searched. The results hit fast. Blackwell Capital, Blackwell Foundation, Blackwell Global. One of the youngest private tech investors in the U.S. Estimated net worth, 9 figures. I swallowed. That's you? He didn't answer. I saw you, I said, in that tower. You looked like you ran the place. I do, he said simply. I took a step back. Everything inside me wanted to run. Not out of fear, but shame, embarrassment, that cold, sharp awareness that this whole time, I'd been standing in the rain while he held the umbrella, and never told me it was made of gold. Why lie? I whispered. I didn't lie, he said, I just didn't correct you. I scoffed, same thing. No, he said, more firmly now, because I wasn't here to be him, not in this place, not with you. I stared at him. So what, this is some kind of escape? Your little poverty field trip? He flinched, just slightly, but I saw it. No, he said, this was me trying to remember who I am when no one's watching. Silence. I didn't know what to say. And he didn't try to fill it. Finally, I looked at him, really looked, past the hoodie and the toolbox, past the suit and the building. And I asked the question that scared me most. Was any of this real? His eyes didn't move. You, he said, were the most real thing I've had in a very long time. And I hated how much I wanted to believe him. I didn't avoid him. I just didn't go near him. For 3 days, I changed my schedule, took Jamie to daycare earlier, came home later. If I heard Ethan in the hallway, I waited until the coast was clear. Because I needed to think, and thinking was hard when your body remembered how it felt to trust someone. I told myself it wasn't personal, that I just needed time to process, that it didn't matter who Ethan really was, that it didn't change anything between us. But it did. It changed everything. Not because he was rich. But because he didn't tell me. Because it meant he saw me struggling, saw me at my lowest, and still chose not to let me in, and now I couldn't stop wondering if he ever saw me as an equal at all. Was I just an escape? A project? Something pure to come back to when the world of money and power got too cold? I hated how much it hurt. I hated how much I missed him. Then came Friday. I just picked Jamie up from daycare. We were walking up the block when I saw it. A car. Not just any car, black, sleek, silent, the kind you see in spy movies, where the doors close like a whisper and the tires cost more than my rent. Parked outside our building. And standing next to it, heels clicking on the cracked sidewalk, was a woman. Tall, elegant, wearing a red dress that looked like it belonged in a magazine shoot, hair like dark silk, lips painted crimson. She wasn't from around here. And she was waiting. I slowed as I got closer, clutching Jamie's hand a little tighter. And then Ethan stepped out of the building. Dressed not like my neighbor, but like the man I saw through the tower glass, suit, coat, sleek watch glinting in the sun. She turned to him with a dazzling smile. "About time," she said, her voice smooth as honey. He didn't smile back, just nodded and opened the car door for her. And just before he slid into the car behind her, he looked up. Saw me. Saw Jamie. I froze. He didn't wave, didn't call out. But his eyes, they lingered. Apologetic, heavy. Like he wanted to say something but couldn't, like he knew what this looked like. The car pulled away. I stood there for a long time after. Jamie tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, was that your friend?" I blinked, swallowed. "No, baby," I said softly, "I don't think he is anymore." I didn't cry that night. I wanted to. I sat on the edge of my bed long after Jamie fell asleep, still in my coat, shoes barely untied, staring at the floor like it owed me an explanation. But I didn't cry. Instead, I got angry. Angry at myself, for falling, for trusting, for imagining, even for a second, that someone like him would choose someone like me. That woman in red, she belonged in his world. I was just the placeholder, the warm, tired girl next door who made him soup and didn't ask questions. I couldn't stop replaying the look in his eyes, that silent apology from across the sidewalk, and what was that, exactly? Was he sorry he got caught? Or sorry I saw something I was never supposed to? The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I didn't move. Another knock, softer. "Maya," came his voice, "please." I stayed perfectly still, like if I didn't breathe, he might disappear. Then a soft scrape, paper sliding under the door. When I finally opened it, he was gone, but on the floor was a folded letter in thick, cream stationery. Just my name, written in his hand. I opened it. "I didn't want you to find out like this. That woman, her name is Celine, she's not what you think, but even if I told you everything, I know it wouldn't matter until you're ready to hear it. You matter to me, Maya, you and Jamie, that hasn't changed, that won't change. I'll be here when you're ready. E." I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. And then, finally, I cried. But not because I missed him. Not because I believed him. I cried because some part of me wanted to believe him, and I didn't know if that meant I was a fool. That afternoon, he tried again. He waited in the hallway while I came up the stairs. I couldn't avoid him this time. Jamie was holding my hand, and the door was right behind him. "Maya," he said, stepping aside. "Don't," I said quickly, "don't make this harder." "I'm not here to explain," he said, "just to say I'm sorry, and that I understand." "You don't," I snapped, the pain spiking out of me sharper than I meant. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to scrape coins together for cereal and bus fare while someone like you plays pretend in a $300 hoodie." He said nothing. I shook my head. "You gave me cough syrup and fixed a cabinet, and you made me feel like we were equals, but we're not, we never were." He took a breath, like he was going to fight it. But then, he nodded. "You're right," he said, "we weren't." And he left. Just like that. And somehow, that hurt more than if he'd tried to argue. Because maybe the cruelest part of all was that he actually listened. Days passed. I focused on surviving, waking up, feeding Jamie, making it to work without crying into the sink between shifts. Ethan didn't knock again. He didn't leave flowers or messages or beg. And that made it worse. Because it meant he meant what he said, he'd wait until I was ready. Only I wasn't sure I ever would be. But Jamie, he noticed. "Where's Mr. Ethan?" he asked one morning, chewing the crust off his toast. I froze mid-pour with the milk carton. "He's busy, baby." Jamie blinked, but he always fixes the faucet, and he makes the funny voices when we read. "I know," I said, "too fast, he just can't right now, okay?" Jamie looked down at his plate. "Is he mad at us?" I nearly broke. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, brushing his curls back. "He's not mad. Sometimes, adults just need space." Jamie nodded like he understood. But he didn't. Not really. And neither did I. That afternoon, I went to the corner bodega to grab some eggs and cereal. Mrs. Lila, the owner's wife, was restocking gum near the counter when she spotted me. "Maya," she said, smiling warmly, "how's the little one?" I gave the usual answer, growing fast, too fast. She glanced behind me, then leaned in. "You seen that boy from your floor? The tall one? Handsome, quiet, good manners." My stomach fluttered. "No," I said, "not in a few days." "Strange," she murmured, "he was in here last week buying snacks for your son. Said he had to sneak them past you." My eyes widened. "What?" "Chocolate coins," she added, "the kind in gold foil. Said Jamie liked them, paid in cash, didn't want me to tell you." I stared at her, heartbeat slowing. She leaned back, adjusting a row of tic-tacs. "He's got a good heart, that one, rare these days, especially for his kind." I frowned. "His kind?" Mrs. Lila looked at me like I'd asked the color of the sky. "You don't know?" she said. "Honey, that boy's face was on Forbes last year. My nephew showed me, said he's some tech genius or investment mogul or something." I felt the floor tilt under me. She chuckled softly. "Crazy, right? Lives like a regular guy, never bragged, just helped folks, paid Mr. Gino's rent last month when his SSI check didn't come in." I didn't know what to say. Because suddenly it hit me, how many things he'd done quietly. And not for praise, not for performance. Just because he could. And for the first time since the day I saw that woman in red, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten it all wrong. It started with a balloon. Bright blue, floating just above the sidewalk outside our building, bobbing gently in the breeze, tied to a thick white envelope. Jamie spotted it first. "Mommy," he cried, tugging my hand, "that's for me." I frowned. "How do you know?" "Because it's blue," he said matter-of-factly, "and blue's my favorite." "Fair enough." He darted toward it, giggling, and carefully untied the envelope. Inside was a single card, thick, heavy paper, like something from a wedding invitation. But the handwriting was familiar. To Jamie. "Come play, bring mommy. There's cake. I swallowed hard. "Can we go, mommy?" Jamie asked, eyes bright. I hesitated. This was a trap, I knew it, not the dangerous kind, the emotional kind, the kind where you walk in thinking you're okay, and leave with your chest in pieces. But Jamie had already made up his mind, and honestly, so had I. It was at a park on the far side of the city, not the rundown playground near our building. No, this place had fountains, real grass, an actual piano player under a gazebo. We followed a line of colorful flags to a shaded clearing, and suddenly I understood. It wasn't a party. It was a world. Kids laughing, balloons everywhere, a bounce house, servers with trays of fruit and mini sandwiches, and Ethan, standing at the edge, sleeves rolled, hair windswept, holding a plastic sword as two toddlers tried to defeat him. Jamie let go of my hand and ran to him. I stayed back, watched. Ethan crouched down. Met Jamie with a grin, and gave him a sword too. They played for 20 minutes. I still didn't move. And then, just when I thought I could leave unnoticed, a voice said, "You must be Maya." I turned to see a woman, older, graceful, dressed like old money and charm, sharp eyes behind cat-eye sunglasses, a presence that made me stand up straighter. "I'm Evelyn," she said, offering a hand, "Ethan's mother." My mouth went dry. "Oh," I said dumbly, "hi." She smiled politely. He didn't tell me much, just that he met someone real. I shifted uncomfortably. "We're not really." She raised a hand. "Relax, dear, I'm not here to interrogate you. I just wanted to meet the woman who got him to give a damn again." I blinked, again. She sighed softly, folding her arms. "Ethan's always been brilliant, but guarded, controlled, even as a boy. He built empires, but forgot how to play. You reminded him." "I didn't mean to." "Exactly," she said, smiling, "that's why it mattered." We stood in silence for a moment, watching Jamie squeal as he chased Ethan around a tree. Then she added, almost like an afterthought, "He's hurt, you know, but he respects your space." I nodded, heart thudding. She turned to go, then paused. "One more thing," she said, "you should know, Celine isn't his girlfriend, never was, she's his ex-fiancée." I blinked. She came back to stir the pot. She's good at that. Then Evelyn walked away, leaving me stunned. "And Ethan?" He looked up and saw me across the lawn. Just for a second. No pressure, no smile. But his eyes said what his words never pushed. "You're welcome here, if you want to be." And for the first time in days. I didn't want to run. The party wound down as the sun dipped low. Parents gathered their kids, streamers tangled in the grass, laughter turned into yawns, and Ethan. He stayed. Jamie was passed out in my arms, his curls damp with sweat and sugar. I shifted him onto a bench and covered him with my coat. When I turned, Ethan was already there. "Close, but not too close." "I didn't expect you to come," he said quietly. I nodded. I didn't either. He glanced at Jamie. He had fun. "Yeah, you made that happen." A pause, wind in the trees. "Your mom came to say hi," I added, watching his reaction. He blinked. "She did?" "She told me about Celine, about your past." His jaw clenched slightly. "That wasn't how I wanted you to find out." I figured. He shifted, hands in his pockets. "It wasn't a relationship worth revisiting. I ended it for a reason." "And she came back anyway?" He nodded. "She always comes back when she needs something to break." I watched him carefully, and me seeing her that day, was that part of her game? "No," he said firmly, "that was me being stupid. I thought I could handle it without anyone getting hurt." "Well," I said, crossing my arms, "you were wrong." "I know." Another beat of silence. "You lied to me," I said. "I did," he admitted, by omission. "I didn't tell you who I was because, with you, I wasn't the guy everyone expects me to be. I was just Ethan, the neighbor, the man who couldn't fix his own damn faucet without Googling it first." I let out a short laugh before I could stop it. He smiled. "You laughed, that's something." I shook my head. "This isn't forgiveness, not yet." "I'm not asking for it," he said, just understanding. I looked at him then, really looked. And I saw it, the regret, the restraint, the silent hope he was too proud to say out loud. You hurt me, I whispered. I know. But, you didn't owe me anything. His eyes flickered. I think I did. We stood in that quiet for what felt like forever. And then I asked, softly, why did you do all this? The party, the balloon, the cake. For Jamie, he said, and for you, not to win you over, not to make you forget, just because I wanted to give you something good. I stared down at my hands, my fingers curled and uncurled. I don't know what this is, I said honestly. Us, or what it could be, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel anything. He took a step closer, slow, careful. You don't have to decide today. Good, I said, because I won't. He nodded. Then, quietly, would it be okay if I checked in on you two sometime? No expectations, no hidden motives. I considered that. Then nodded once. Okay. He smiled, not the charming billionaire smile, the real one, the one I knew from back when he was just the guy next door with tired eyes and quiet kindness. And just like that, a door opened. Not all the way. But enough. It started with a knock. 3 days after the park party. Not urgent, not desperate. Just a soft rhythm, like someone asking, is it okay if I care? I opened the door slowly. Ethan stood there with 2 coffees and a sheepish look on his face. No expectations, he said quickly, just caffeine. I stared at the cups, then at him. You don't know how I take it. He grinned. I got both versions, one's just black, the other's 3 sugars, 2 creams. I figured if I got it wrong, at least I tried. That made me smile, despite myself. I stepped back wordlessly and let him in. He handed me both cups and waited as I tested each. 3 sugars, I said, sipping, not bad. He looked proud. I'll remember. We sat on the couch, not close, not far. Jamie was still at daycare. My late shift got moved for the week, so I had a few stolen hours of silence. Thanks for the party, I said finally. Jamie hasn't stopped talking about the pirate hats. He chuckled. He's a natural leader. All the other kids were following his sword. Yeah, he's exhausting. He's amazing. The way he said it made something soft settle in my chest. I cleared my throat. So, what do billionaires do in the middle of the day when they're not crashing pirate parties? He raised an eyebrow. You want the curated answer or the real one? I looked at him. Give me real. He leaned back. Today? I had a board meeting. Argued with my CFO about reallocating capital to early education initiatives, and fired someone for manipulating grant numbers. I blinked. That's intense. He shrugged. It's just work. You probably deal with more chaos in the lunch rush at your diner. I don't deal with embezzlement. He smiled. No, but you deal with people. That's harder. I looked down at my coffee. The weight of his words sat somewhere between a compliment and a challenge. Then I said, without meaning to, so what now? He looked up. What do you mean? You and me, this, whatever it is. I said I don't know. I still don't. That's okay. I sighed. I don't want to lose myself. I spent a long time rebuilding. His eyes softened. Then we go slow, he said. You lead, I'll follow. And somehow, those 6 words, so simple, meant more than a grand gesture ever could. Later that week, I got a message. From Ethan. Hey, no pressure, thought you and Jamie might want to see the aquarium this weekend, VIP passes, private tour, you can say no, or yes, or hell no, just thought I'd ask. I stared at the text for a long time. Then I texted back. We'll come, but no fancy stuff, I want the real tour, cracked tanks and fish poop and all. His reply came instantly. Deal, no glitter, just stingrays. And for the first time in a long time. I laughed, out loud, all alone. It felt good. The aquarium smelled like salt, metal, and childhood wonder. Jamie clutched my hand with a grip only 6-year-olds and terrified lovers ever have, tight, sweaty, and full of questions. "Do they have sharks?" he whispered, eyes wide as we stepped through the huge glass doors. Ethan was already waiting at the entrance, jeans, hoodie, no suit, his usual effortless look, but softened, less curated, like he didn't want the spotlight today. I appreciated that. "Hey, Captain," Ethan said to Jamie, crouching down, ready to command the sea. Jamie giggled and nodded furiously. "And hi," Ethan said to me. Just that, just hi, like we were normal, like everything didn't carry weight in history and all the things we weren't saying yet. I nodded, hi. The private tour wasn't flashy. No velvet ropes, no champagne, just a kind older woman named Irene who clearly loved fish more than people, and knew every animal's name like they were her grandkids. "This one's Gerald," she said, tapping the tank as a bulbous yellow fish floated by. "He's antisocial, just like my second husband." I laughed, Ethan did too. Jamie was glued to the glass, watching a school of silver fish zip around like lightning. We walked slowly, the three of us, not a couple, not a family. Just a moment. "I used to come here as a kid," Ethan said quietly as we passed a tank of jellyfish, their bodies pulsing like heartbeats, "before my dad got too busy, before everything got cold." I glanced at him. There it was again, that rare crack in his perfect shell. "And now?" I asked. He shrugged, "Now I own it, or at least part of it." "Of course you do." He smiled, but I hadn't been back, not in years, didn't know how much I missed it. I watched him as he stared at the glowing tank in front of us. "You know," I said softly, "you don't always have to be in control." His eyes slid to mine. "You say that," he murmured, "but I've spent most of my life building walls just to survive. It's not easy to unlearn." "I get that," I said, "believe me, I do, but walls don't just keep pain out, they keep people out too." We stood there, inches apart, surrounded by silence and seawater and unspoken things. "Is that what I'm doing?" he asked, voice low, "keeping you out?" I looked up at him, really looked, the boy he used to be, the man he was now, the one trying. "No," I said, "you're letting me in, slowly." And then he smiled, this small, almost imperceptible thing, not triumphant, not seductive, just grateful. Jamie ran up then, breathless. "They let me feed the stingrays." "Did you wash your hands?" I asked. "I licked them." Ethan choked on a laugh, and I groaned. We ended the day with ice cream on the steps outside, Jamie's mouth covered in chocolate, my heart doing that stupid soft ache thing again. Before we left, Ethan handed Jamie a tiny plush turtle from the gift shop. "This one's for bravery," he said. Jamie beamed. Then he looked at me. "I had fun today," he said. "You?" I nodded. "Yeah, I did." He didn't try to kiss me. Didn't ask me to stay. He just said, "Thanks for coming," and walked us to the cab. And as I watched him disappear in the rearview mirror, something inside me whispered what I wasn't ready to say out loud yet. Maybe the walls don't need to be rebuilt this time. It started with a phone call. I was wiping down the diner counter when Carla, my manager and resident gossip funnel, walked in with a wide-eyed look and her phone clutched like it was radioactive. "Maya," she whispered, "you need to see this." I took her phone, blinked, scrolled, and felt my stomach drop. Billionaire Ethan Maddox spotted on Daddy Duty with mystery woman and child. Sources say it's getting serious. There was a blurry photo, me, Ethan, Jamie, at the aquarium, laughing, smiling. Too real. Too exposed. My throat tightened. "Is that you?" Carla asked, already knowing the answer. I handed her phone back. "It's nothing." But it wasn't. My hands trembled the whole rest of my shift. When I got home, there were 3 voicemails from Ethan. I didn't answer. Then came the knock, firm, familiar. I opened the door just enough to see his face. He looked tired, angry. "I didn't do this," he said before I could speak. I crossed my arms. Then who did? He sighed. The aquarium. Paparazzi tipped off. Probably an employee. It wasn't planned, Maya. You're a public figure, I snapped. You know how this works. You brought us into your world without warning. I tried to keep it quiet. Well, congratulations, we're a headline now. Jamie peeked around the corner. I motioned for him to stay put. Ethan's jaw tensed. Let me fix it. No, I said, that's the problem. You think everything can be fixed, but I didn't ask for any of this. He was quiet for a long time. Then, so what now? I don't know, I said, but I need space. I need to protect Jamie, and myself. He nodded slowly. If you need me, he said carefully, you know where to find me. And then he left. No fight. No drama. Just silence. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The article was already spreading online. My coworkers whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. Jamie was too young to understand, but someday he would, and what then? This wasn't just a love story anymore. It was a reckoning. The next morning, Jamie climbed into bed beside me, holding his plush turtle. Mom, he whispered, is Mr. Ethan sad? My heart cracked right down the middle. I think he might be, I said honestly. Jamie nodded. Then maybe we should tell him he's still our friend. I pulled him close and buried my face in his curls. Because I didn't have the words to explain that sometimes, friendship comes with a cost, and sometimes, love isn't enough to make it easy. The diner was unusually quiet for a Friday. Carla pretended to wipe menus, but I could feel her watching me from behind the counter. My phone sat face down next to the register. I hadn't checked it in hours. The gossip sites had gone from whisper to wildfire. Suddenly, I wasn't just a single mom, I was a mystery woman who might be carrying a billionaire's child. One outlet even called me a modern-day Cinderella, if Cinderella had bills, baggage, and social anxiety. The bell over the door jingled. A man in a black suit walked in, not Ethan. Are you Maya Delaney? He asked politely, holding out a small envelope. This is from Mr. Maddox. I didn't take it. What is it? He asked me to deliver it personally. He said it's a courtesy. The man placed it gently on the counter and left without another word. I stared at the envelope like it might explode. Eventually, I opened it. Inside was a simple handwritten note on heavy cream paper. Watch Channel 6, noon, no need to respond, just wanted you to hear it first, E. I turned on the break room TV at 11:59. At 12:01, Ethan Maddox stood behind a press podium, flanked by 2 advisors and a sea of cameras. He looked sharp, confident, but something about his posture, shoulders squared, jaw firm, told me this wasn't damage control. This was personal. Good afternoon, I won't take much of your time, but I wanted to address the recent media coverage involving myself, a young boy, and his mother, Maya Delaney. My heart seized. Let me be clear. Maya is not a scandal, she is not a fling, she is not a mystery, she is a woman I care for deeply, a woman with strength, integrity, and more courage than most of the executives I sit across from. I froze. She is also not a public figure, she didn't ask for this attention, and she doesn't owe the world an explanation, but I do. He paused, took a breath. The media exposure was unintentional and unapproved. In response, I've launched an internal investigation to address the breach of privacy, but more importantly, I want to apologize to her, publicly, because while I've spent years building empires, I've never quite learned how to protect what matters most. The room was silent. This ends now, she deserves peace, and if you're wondering who she is to me, she's someone I admire, someone I'm learning from, someone I hope will forgive me, in time. And then, just like that, he stepped away. No questions, no PR spin, no applause. Just truth. And every wall I'd built? I felt them start to tremble. Later that day, Carla slid me a cup of coffee and cleared her throat. Well, damn, she said, if that's not love, I don't know what is. I didn't answer, just stared out the window, my hands warm around the cup. Because part of me wanted to run. But another part, the louder part, wanted to run straight into his arms. I didn't call him. I didn't text, or write back, or storm through his office in a dramatic rom-com haze. Instead, I walked to the post office 2 blocks from the diner. Bought a plain white envelope. Tucked a note inside. Then mailed it to his office with no return address, no signature. Just my handwriting, small and neat. You remembered the coffee order. You saw Jamie, not just me. And you stood still when it would have been easier to walk away. That matters. Thank you. That's all it said. Because sometimes, love doesn't look like flowers or begging. Sometimes it looks like permission to try again. 3 days passed. Then one night, just after I tucked Jamie in, there was a soft knock. Not at the front door. At the back. The service entrance by the alley where I kept the trash bins. I peeked through the curtain, heart thudding. It was Ethan, in a baseball cap and hoodie, like he didn't want the world to see him unless I did first. I opened the door. You got my note, I said softly. He held up his phone. I read it 100 times. We stood in the threshold. No promises. No rush. I didn't come to ask for anything, he said, just to be near you. Okay. And maybe, he added, holding up a paper bag, to bring cookies. I arched an eyebrow. Chocolate chip. Triple. Then you can stay. He exhaled a laugh, that small, real one I liked best. We sat on the porch, just outside the door, the stars above us, the alley behind, and a bag of cookies between us. Jamie was asleep, the city was quiet. I was scared, I admitted after a long silence, not of you, of me, of losing myself again. Ethan didn't speak, just waited. Every time something good happens, I brace for it to fall apart. I can't afford fairy tales. He nodded slowly. I don't want to be your fairy tale. What do you want to be? He looked at me, really looked. Someone you can lean on without F. Someone who stands beside you even when the world doesn't clap, someone real. I stared down at the cookie in my hand, then looked back at him. You're getting close. Close to what? To me. He smiled, quiet and sure. Then I'll stay close, as long as it takes. We didn't kiss. We didn't promise forever. But as we sat there, breathing in the soft night air, I realized something important. Maybe love wasn't about big moments. Maybe it was about showing up. Even if it meant standing by the back door, in the dark, with nothing but cookies and hope. The dress was deep green, silk, slid up the thigh, expensive enough that I couldn't decide if I should wear it or frame it. Ethan had it delivered with a note. You don't have to impress anyone, you already do. Jamie clapped when I put it on. You look like a princess. More like a terrified caterer, I muttered. It wasn't just a party, it was his family's annual charity gala, a black tie spectacle hosted by the Maddox Foundation, the kind of place where billionaires rubbed elbows with governors, and everyone's smile was 2 inches too wide. And I was a waitress from a broken town, with borrowed heels and a stomach full of second-guessing. But I went. Not for them. For Ethan. For us. The venue was a museum, glass ceilings, marble floors, strings of lights like fallen stars. A string quartet played something soft and self-important in the corner. Ethan met me at the door. Black tux, no tie, smile like he'd been waiting all his life. You're here, he said, as if still surprised. You asked. You didn't have to say yes. I know, I said, but I wanted to. He offered me his arm. Ready? No, I said, but let's go anyway. People stared. Of course they did. Men in tailored suits nodded politely. Women with perfect skin and polite venom gave me once-overs like I was a social experiment. Ethan didn't flinch, not once. He introduced me, held my hand, whispered jokes to keep me from drifting too far into my own doubt. But then she arrived. Tall, blonde, glittering, familiar in a way I didn't like. Ethan, she purred, stepping into our circle, I didn't know you were bringing someone. He stiffened. Hello, Christine, he said, voice careful. She looked at me like I was a misplaced coat check. Nice to meet you, I said, sticking out my hand. She ignored it, smiled tightly. Must be difficult, she said sweetly, stepping into this world, everything must feel so big. I matched her smile, not really, I've seen bigger egos in smaller towns. Ethan choked on his drink. Christine's eyes narrowed. I'm sure you're charming, she said. Ethan always did have a weakness for the simple things. The word simple hit like a slap. But I didn't blink. I just leaned in slightly, and I'm sure you're still used to getting what you want. How's that working out for you? She stepped back, just a little. Then turned and disappeared into the crowd. Ethan looked at me like I'd just sprouted wings. You okay? He asked. I took a deep breath, smiled, a little too wide. I'm still standing. Later, he found me on the balcony. City lights sprawled below us, like constellations rearranged for our view. I should have warned you about her, he said. You didn't need to, I replied. She speaks fluent insecurity. He touched my hand. You were incredible. I was terrified. He turned to face me. I don't care about any of them, Maya, you know that, right? If I had to choose. You don't have to, I said, quiet but firm, I'm not asking you to. But I want to, he said, I want you in every part of my life, even the messy ones, especially those. The wind moved through my hair, his hand found mine. Okay, I said finally, then I'll stay, for the mess, for you. And when he kissed me, slow, certain, reverent, it wasn't the kiss of a billionaire showing off. It was a man saying thank you for believing in him. Even when he wasn't sure he deserved it. It started with a folder. Just a manila folder left on the counter at the diner while I was in the back, stacking cups. The label read, Maya Delaney, confidential. My heart stuttered, the handwriting wasn't Ethan's. Inside were photos, reports, a background check, bank statements, even Jamie's birth certificate. And stapled to the front was a sticky note. Ask your boyfriend why he needed this before he ever kissed you, see. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't cry. I burned. I waited until Jamie was asleep, my hands were steady, my voice wasn't. Ethan, I said when he picked up, we need to talk. He came over in 10 minutes, no driver, no suit, just him. I opened the door and held up the folder. Want to explain this? His face shifted, not shocked, guilty. Maya. You investigated me? My voice cracked, before you even knew me? I didn't, it wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He stepped inside, quiet, cautious. I asked for a background check before the diner deal, standard protocol. I was protecting my assets. Protecting yourself from me? I snapped. I didn't know you then. But you knew enough to snoop through my life, my son's life. Silence stretched. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I was ashamed, he said finally, because somewhere between doing what I always do and meeting you, I stopped caring about risk and started caring about you. I shook my head. You should have told me when we got close. I didn't want it to ruin things. But it has, Ethan. He stepped forward. I'm sorry, I was stupid, I made a mistake, and I kept making it by not being honest. I looked at him, really looked, the man who kissed my son on the forehead and stood up for me at that gala, who bought me cookies and watched cartoons on my couch, who also kept something from me. I crossed my arms. What else don't I know? He shook his head slowly. Nothing, that's the worst of it. And Christine? His jaw tensed. She knew about the check because she used to do those for me. She's part of the foundation's legal advisory team. And she dropped this off tonight? He nodded. I swallowed, so I'm her pawn. No, he said, fiercely now, you're the one thing in my life she can't control. We stood there in my kitchen, a foot apart, 1,000 feelings between us. I don't know what to do with this, I admitted, voice soft. You don't have to know tonight, he said, just, don't shut the door on us. I looked down at the folder, then at him. I won't shut the door, I said. But I'm not ready to open it either. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Jamie curled beside me, one hand on his turtle, one tucked into mine. And I wondered. Was it worse to be lied to? Or to be watched before someone even cared enough to ask who you really were? The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. It's the cup of coffee you don't finish. The silence in a shared room. The way your own name suddenly sounds foreign in someone else's mouth. That week, I went on like normal. I poured coffee, took orders, helped Jamie with his spelling. But inside? Something was tearing quietly. Ethan didn't call. Not the next morning. Not the day after. Not even a text. And I hated how much I checked my phone anyway. But maybe this was good. Space, air, room to think. So I sat with the file one night after Jamie fell asleep, laid every page out across the table, read it slowly. Most of it was harmless, public records, diner income reports, credit score, but one line near the back froze me. Subject has no known familial support system, high resilience index, repeated indicators of emotional self-reliance. It was so clinical, so cold. Like I was just data. A liability to be managed. A single mom with no backup plan and too much hope. I was mid-shift at the diner the next day when my coworker buzzed my shoulder. You've got visitors, she said, raising an eyebrow. I turned toward the window. 2 women in designer coats had taken the corner booth. One of them was Christine. I exhaled slowly, walked over. Ladies, I said coolly, not bothering with a smile. Christine crossed one leg over the other. Relax, we're not here for a scene. Then you picked the wrong zip code. Her friend chuckled lightly, like they were at brunch. Christine leaned forward. You should know I've submitted an anonymous tip to the Times, she said, voice low, about Ethan's questionable involvement with the single mother he now funds. There's an angle, you know, misuse of foundation influence, possible fraud, board conflict. My stomach clenched. You're bluffing. Am I? I didn't blink. You don't care about ethics, you care that he's not yours anymore. Christine's smile thinned. He's still mine in ways you couldn't begin to understand. You think he chose you? Ethan doesn't choose, he acquires, and he always comes back to what's familiar. I stepped back from the table. You just made one mistake. Oh. You came into my place, and I don't serve trash. I walked off without another word. The door behind me slammed as they left. That night, I locked up early. Sat behind the register and finally cried, not because of Ethan. Because of me. Because I wanted to believe again, because I'd started to imagine more. And now? Now I had to decide what I was really protecting, my heart. Or my freedom. It was Jamie who answered the knock. I was in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes. Mom, he called, it's him. I dried my hands, took a breath, walked to the door. Ethan stood there, messier than usual, no tailored coat, no bodyguards, just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. I shouldn't be here, he said first, but I had to see you. I didn't invite him in, not yet. There's more, isn't there? He nodded. Christine leaked the story. My chest tightened. About us? He nodded again. It hit this morning, online. Social media's already chewing it up. I'm trending, for all the wrong reasons. And me? He hesitated, then handed me his phone. Headline, Billionaire Caught Funding Secret Life of Single Mom Waitress. Is it love or leverage? Photos of us at the diner, a blurry one of Jamie, one of me, close-up, mid-laugh, probably taken by someone with a long lens and no soul. They're tearing me apart, I whispered. I know. I looked up. Did you know she'd do this? No, but I should've, she warned me. I didn't take her seriously. Because she's still in love with you. He winced. She was. I never returned it. But you used her, I said quietly. He didn't argue. And you used me too, in the beginning. I know, he said, and I can't take that back, but I can tell the truth now. He reached into his coat and handed me a copy of a statement. His official response, the one going to the press in the morning. I scanned it. Maya Delaney is not my secret, she is my choice, she is not a project, she is not a liability, and she is no one's story to twist but her own. Any insinuation otherwise is rooted in elitism and cruelty, and I refuse to play by those rules. I stared at it. You're putting this out? Yes. And you're bored? Half of them already want me gone. And your foundation? They'll survive. But will you? He stepped closer. Not without you. I sat on the couch later, Jamie asleep upstairs, phone vibrating nonstop with news alerts, gossip pages, and anonymous judgment. I clicked on one post. 1,000 comments. Some kind. Some cruel. All loud. I turned off the phone. Then I opened a blank email draft, typed the subject line. My side of the story. I didn't write it for clicks. I wrote it for myself. Because maybe the world had seen me through a lens. But they hadn't heard me yet. And I was done whispering. The subject line read. Before you judge me, read this. I clicked post at exactly 6:00 a.m., before Jamie woke up, before the world had time to reload its cruelty. The blog was just a white page, black text, no fancy graphics, no clickbait. Just me. From Maya Delaney. Single mom, waitress, woman. I didn't ask for a billionaire, I asked for a second chance. I didn't audition for some Cinderella story, I was working a double shift with no sleep and a sick kid. But love doesn't wait for permission, sometimes it shows up wearing a suit, holding a coffee, and asking about pie. I didn't know who Ethan Cole was when I met him, I just knew he looked tired, like me. And when he offered to help, I said no, then yes, then no again. Because people like me? We don't trust handouts, we've seen what they cost. But then I got to know him, not the boardroom version, the man who laughs at my kids' knock-knock jokes, who showed up at my diner in the rain just to hear about my day. Did he make mistakes? Yes, so did I. But here's what I won't do. I won't let the world reduce me to a scandal or a case file. I am a mother. I am not for sale. And this story is mine now. I didn't look at comments, didn't wait for praise. I just closed the laptop, poured Jamie cereal, and kissed the top of his sleepy head. Elsewhere. Ethan sat in a conference room downtown, half the board wore disapproval like cufflinks. His phone buzzed, 12 times. He read Maya's post. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he stood, walked to the window, and said to no one in particular. She just did what I couldn't. One of the board members looked up. Excuse me? She told the truth, better than I ever could. He left the meeting 10 minutes later. Didn't say where he was going. Didn't need to. Back in the diner, the morning crowd was thinner than usual. One regular slid a $5 tip under her coffee mug with a scribbled note. For what it's worth, you're kind of a badass. Another customer asked, are you really her? Maya smiled, depends who her is. And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. But peace is never permanent. By evening, Maya got a call. The voice was unfamiliar, cold, professional. This is Justine Leclerc, I represent Ethan Cole's private trust. You and I need to talk, privately, soon. Maya frowned. Why? Because someone just filed for full custody of your son. I didn't recognize the name on the caller ID. Justine Leclerc, attorney at law, voice crisp as broken glass. I'm calling on behalf of a client with legal interest in Jamie Delaney. My breath caught. Who? I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. She paused. David Klein. I went cold. I hadn't heard that name in 6 years. Jamie's biological father. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hand resting over my heart like I could quiet it by force. Ethan called once. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't know how to explain what was happening inside me without breaking. The next morning, I dug out the old envelope. The one I'd buried under a pile of memories I never wanted to touch again. Inside, one crumpled letter, dated 5 months after Jamie was born. Maya. I know I screwed up, I wasn't ready, but I want to try now. I've got a job lined up in Houston, maybe we can work something out, let me know, or don't, either way, he deserves to know me. D. I never wrote back. He never tried again. Until now. I sat across from Justine Leclerc in a sterile downtown office. Ethan had offered to come, I told him no. I want to hear it alone, I said. Justine folded her hands. Mr. Klein claims he was denied contact, that he's sober now, stable, employed, he's petitioning for supervised visitation, with long-term interest in shared custody. I laughed bitterly. You're joking. He has a legal right to petition, whether he wins is another matter. And what does he want? To see his son, she said, to be in his life. I leaned forward. Then where was he when Jamie had a fever of 104 at 3 in the morning and I couldn't afford a cab to the ER? Where was he when Jamie cried because his kindergarten shoes had holes and I had to sew them shut with dental floss? Her eyes flickered, just for a second. I stood. You tell him this, Jamie has a parent, he doesn't need a ghost with a title. Justine didn't argue. She just slid a document across the table. Hearings in 2 weeks. That night, I told Ethan everything. He sat silent on the edge of the couch, hands steepled beneath his chin. Then he asked, what do you want me to do? I stared at him. And for once, I said the thing I'd never dared say before. Nothing, I don't need you to fix this, I need you to stand back and trust that I'm not the one who needs rescuing. He blinked. Then nodded, slowly, respectfully. I'll be here, he said, however you need. And just like that, I felt stronger than I ever had before. The worst part about fear isn't the panic. It's the stillness that comes before it. The waiting. The knowing. The way you start imagining the worst before it even happens, because somehow, it feels safer to prepare for heartbreak than to hope for peace. I was folding Jamie's laundry when he looked up from the kitchen table, spoon midair. Mom? He asked. Yeah, baby. Did I have a dad, before Ethan? My hands froze around a pair of socks. There it was. The question I knew would come one day, I just didn't think it would come when there were still juice stains on the counter and cartoons in the background. I sat down across from him. You did, I said softly. What happened? I took a breath. He wasn't ready to be a dad, not then, and I didn't want you to grow up around someone who didn't know how to love you the way you deserve. Jamie nodded slowly. Is he coming now? I blinked. What do you mean? I heard you on the phone, you said, he wants to see Jamie. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. Yes, I said, he asked to. Do I have to see him? Only 8 years old, and somehow already braver than me. No, I said, gently but firmly, you don't have to do anything, we're gonna figure it out together, okay? He looked down at his cereal. Okay. Then he added, I like Ethan, but he's not trying to be my dad, he just shows up, that's enough. God, the things kids know. Later that night, Ethan knocked on the back door of the diner. It was closed, lights dimmed, but I let him in. I read everything, he said, about David, the letters, the old records, the history. And? I hate him, he said simply, but I also know this isn't about me hating him, it's about you protecting Jamie, and protecting yourself. He pulled out a manila folder. What's that? My legal team found a few things, he said, David's former employers, a missed court date from 3 years ago, and something else. He slid it across the counter. Surveillance footage? From a halfway house he stayed at in Austin, 2 years ago, he got into a fight on the front steps, not exactly stable behavior, especially with a custody petition coming up. I stared at the screen, then closed the folder. Thank you. I won't say a word in court unless you want me there, but I'll be in the front row either way. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward. Wrapped my arms around him. Held on, just for a moment. Then whispered, "You already are." The legal office smelled like lemon disinfectant and old carpet glue. Maya sat in a too-big chair, across from a woman with strong glasses and stronger posture. Eleanor Price, family lawyer, late 50s, no nonsense, the kind of woman who could burn a judge down with a single eyebrow raise. First, Eleanor said, clicking her pen, "You need to understand. Courts aren't about fairness, they're about evidence, stability, and what looks best on paper." "I don't have much paper," Maya replied honestly. Eleanor smiled faintly. "You have something better, witnesses. School records, community support, and Ethan Cole, who, believe it or not, will not hurt your case, if we play it right." Maya nodded slowly. "What do I need to do?" "Be honest, be composed, and be ready for them to dig." Back home, Maya found a manila envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single handwritten letter. Maya. I don't know what I'm hoping to get out of this, maybe nothing, maybe just a chance to be heard, since I never gave you that back then. I wasn't a good man, I wasn't even a safe one, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say this before a court makes us both sit under fluorescent lights and pretend we were ever normal. I saw Jamie's picture online. He's perfect, he looks like you, he looks happy, that's what got me, that smile, it didn't come from me. I'm sorry I left, I'm sorrier I might come back and hurt you again. I don't know what I'm doing, Maya, I just missed something I never really had, and I thought maybe I still could. David. She read it twice. Then tore it in half, quietly, and threw it away. Not out of anger, but because her energy was no longer for ghosts. Later that night, Maya opened her email to check work updates and found something she hadn't expected. Subject line, "We see you." It was from a social worker in another state. "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I watched your video, I read your post, I've worked with women like you for 15 years, and I just want you to know, you're not invisible anymore, whatever happens in court, you've already won something bigger, your son sees you. And now, the world is starting to, too." Below that, another message. Then another. A librarian in Utah, a waitress in Michigan, a teacher in Florida. All women who had once been shamed for falling in love, for being poor, for raising kids without applause. Now, they were sending her their applause. Maya sat with it. Didn't cry. Just breathed. Because when the noise quiets down, and the lights dim, and the headlines move on, what's left is truth. And her truth was stronger than she'd ever imagined. The courthouse was colder than it should have been. Maybe it was the stone walls. Maybe it was just the weight of what was coming. Maya walked through the metal detector holding Jamie's school photo in her pocket. She didn't need a good luck charm, she just needed why. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered, quiet, respectful. Some held signs that read things like, "Believe mothers. Protect kids, not egos." And one that just said, "We stand with Maya." She blinked hard. Didn't cry. Just kept walking. In the hallway outside the courtroom, she saw him. David. He looked smaller than she remembered, paler, nervous. His suit didn't fit quite right, his shoes scuffed. He met her eyes, and nodded. A silent greeting, or maybe apology. She said nothing, just held her son's picture tighter. Inside, the room was clinical, wood paneling, raised bench, binders stacked like quiet threats. The judge was a woman, that gave Maya a strange kind of hope. Eleanor leaned over. Just breathe, we've got truth, that's more powerful than any argument. Maya nodded. And then it began. David spoke first. He read from a statement. I know I was gone, I know I wasn't there when he was sick, or scared, or starting school. I don't expect to be called a father, I just wanted to try. He looked at Maya. I didn't come to steal him, I came to ask for a chance. It was the first time she'd ever heard him sound human. Then Maya stood. No paper, no rehearsed lines, just her. I've spent the last 8 years loving a boy who never once made me feel like I wasn't enough, and every day, I worked, cleaned, cooked, showed up, through illness, through poverty, through nights I didn't know if we'd have heat or food, but we had love. She glanced at Ethan. He doesn't need rescuing, he's not a broken story, he's my son. And I'm asking this court to protect the life we've built, not the one someone suddenly regrets not being part of. The courtroom was quiet. Even David looked down. At the end of the hearing, the judge requested a recess before ruling. But just before she stood to leave the bench, David cleared his throat. One more thing, Your Honor, he said. Yes, Mr. Klein? He turned to Maya. I'm withdrawing the petition. Gasps, even Eleanor's head snapped up. I came to see him, David said softly, and I did, through her, I saw a happy kid, I saw a mother who doesn't need a man to validate what she's done, I'm not going to undo that. He looked at Maya. I'm sorry I left, I'm more sorry I ever thought I had the right to return. The judge blinked. You understand this means forfeiting any future petition rights under current state law? I do. The gavel hit once. Case closed. Outside, reporters swarmed. Flashes. Voices. Questions like flies. But then Ethan stepped forward. No words. Just him, standing in front of Maya like a quiet shield. And for the first time, she let him. Not because she was weak. But because she finally knew she wasn't alone. There's a strange silence after a battle ends. Not relief. Not celebration. Just the absence of noise. Maya sat on the back porch of Ethan's house, now theirs, though they hadn't said it out loud, and watched Jamie chase fireflies barefoot across the yard. The hearing had been 5 days ago. No reporters. No new headlines. No letters from David. Just peace. And for Maya, that was the scariest part. Because peace was unfamiliar, and unfamiliar still felt unsafe. Do you ever miss it? She asked Ethan that night. He looked up from the grill. Miss what? The high life, the penthouse, the control, the I can fix everything with a phone call energy. He smiled, slow and quiet. Sometimes, mostly the espresso machine. She laughed. Then he said, but I don't miss who I was in those rooms. He was powerful, but he wasn't present. He stepped closer. You made me present. Maya didn't look away. Didn't deflect. Just let the moment stay. I don't need a savior, she said. I know, he replied, that's why I stayed. Later, Ethan handed her a wrapped box. Jamie helped me pick it. Inside was a scrapbook, handmade, messy, perfect. The first page, a photo of her and Jamie at the fair, sticky cotton candy fingers, Maya mid-laugh. The next, a picture Ethan had secretly taken, Maya asleep on the couch, Jamie curled against her chest. The next, a note from Jamie. Dear Mom. I saw the judge pick you. But I picked you first. I know some kids have dads and moms together, I have you and Ethan, that's better. You're the bravest person in the world. P.S. Can we get pancakes tomorrow? Maya read it 3 times. Then whispered, yes, always. That night, she stood at the window, watching the stars. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would look like. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of it. Maya hadn't planned to go back to the diner. Not yet. But on a rainy Thursday morning, she found herself standing outside with her old apron in her hands, staring through the glass. It looked the same. Same flickering open sign, same chipped menu board. But everything had changed. Because she had. Angela, the owner, blinked when she walked in. Maya? Hi, she said softly, I was just in the neighborhood. Angela didn't speak. She just walked around the counter and pulled her into a hug so tight it nearly broke her. And for the first time since that awful video, since the court, since everything, Maya let someone hold her without flinching. She didn't pick up a tray. Didn't take orders. Just sat in the corner with a free coffee and let people come to her. They did, quietly. A mother of 3 who'd once whispered judgment now left a note on the table that read, "You made us proud." A high school girl slid her a friendship bracelet. The cook. He played her favorite song on the kitchen speaker. She hadn't realized it until that moment. The shame she'd carried hadn't been hers. And now, it wasn't sticking anymore. Later that afternoon, as Maya and Ethan walked Jamie home from school, a woman approached them on the sidewalk, mid-30s, press badge, NPR logo on her tote bag. "Excuse me, Ms. Reyes?" Maya's body tensed, but Ethan shifted slightly, placing a steady hand on her lower back. The woman held up both hands. "I'm not here to exploit anything, I just wanted to say, your story mattered, and if you ever want to tell it on your terms, in your words, I'd be honored to help." Maya blinked. "You're with a podcast or something?" "A radio series," she said, "on mothers who raised the world without anyone clapping. You're kind of our season finale." Maya smiled, small but real. "I'll think about it." The woman nodded and left. And Maya turned to Ethan. "What if I told it? Then I'd be the first to listen." That night, Jamie crawled into their bed during a thunderstorm. Curled up in the middle like he had a right to the space, which he did. And as the lightning cracked softly outside, Ethan reached for Maya's hand beneath the covers. Their fingers met, interlocked. No proposal. No grand speech. Just presence. And love. In its simplest, safest form. The email came on a Monday. Subject line: TEDx Talk Opportunity, Motherhood and Grace Under Fire. Maya stared at it for a full minute. Then reread it 5 times. They wanted her to speak, her, a waitress, a single mom, a woman who once cried in the walk-in freezer of a diner because she couldn't afford Jamie's inhaler. Now, they wanted her on a stage. Telling her story. To the world. "I think you should do it," Ethan said that night, reading over her shoulder. Maya exhaled, "But what if I choke?" "Then you choke and stand back up, like you always do." He kissed her cheek. "I've never seen anyone rewrite their own ending the way you have." But it wasn't just Maya with big news. Ethan had a phone call that same week. A venture capital group in New York wanted to bring him on board for a 6-month expansion project. Remote, sure, but there would be travel, high-stakes meetings, the kind of deal that used to make his blood pump. "Are you going to take it?" Maya asked. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he said. "Part of me wants to prove I can still play that game, that I didn't lose my edge just because I found peace." She looked at him quietly. "You didn't lose your edge, you just stopped cutting yourself with it." That stopped him cold. They didn't fight. There were no slammed doors. Just quiet space. She went on a walk, he cooked dinner. They sat together on the couch later, legs touching, saying nothing. Until finally, Ethan said, "If I go, it's not to run from us, it's to make sure I'm bringing all of me to this family, the man I was, and the one I'm becoming." Maya nodded slowly. "I don't need a billionaire, I need you." He smiled, soft and wide. "Then I'll only go if you tell me to." "I'll only tell you to go," she said, "if you promise to come back." They sealed it not with a kiss, but with a handshake. Old school. Real. And somehow, more romantic than anything else they'd done. The stage was smaller than she'd imagined. Not some arena. Just a little red circle in a quiet theater with 200 chairs and lights soft enough to make it feel like a conversation, not a performance. Maya's hands shook as she stepped into the light. Not because she was afraid. But because this wasn't fiction. It was her. Her words, her pain, her fight. All real. And now, all hers to tell. I used to think being strong meant staying invisible, she began. One day I walked through a grocery store with my son, and a woman whispered behind me, "That's the girl from that video." She paused. I remember clutching a box of cereal so tight it nearly broke. Because I didn't feel like a mother, or a human being, I felt like a headline. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. I'm here to say that headlines lie, that single moms aren't failures, that dignity isn't just for the rich. The crowd was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. And soon, the whole room stood for her. Afterward, backstage, Maya stared at her phone. No text from Ethan yet. No, you did it. No, I'm proud of you. Just silence. And suddenly, it hurt more than she expected. Back home that night, Maya curled up with Jamie, watching cartoons in their pajamas. "You were famous today," he whispered. "I don't need to be," she said, "I just need to be yours." The next morning, the doorbell rang. She opened it, and froze. Ethan stood there. Suit wrinkled, tie loose, bags under his eyes. "I was supposed to be in a New York boardroom," he said, "but I watched the live stream from the hotel." He pulled out his phone, hit play. Her voice filled the air. "I'm not the woman from the video. I'm the woman who survived the fallout. And built a garden in the ashes." Tears ran down his face. "I couldn't stay away," he said, "because whatever legacy I build, you're the foundation now." She stepped into him. Let him hold her. And for the first time in months. There was no storm. Just them. Together. Finally whole. The wedding wasn't at a cathedral. It wasn't even on a beach. It was on the back porch of the house Maya once felt too broken to call home. A string of fairy lights. A homemade cake. Jamie standing between them with a bow tie and a toy microphone. "Do you, Ethan Cross, promise to never buy a private jet without asking Mom first?" Laughter. Ethan nodded solemnly, "I do." "And do you, Maya Reyes, promise to let Ethan eat the last slice of pizza if he looks really sad?" Maya pretended to think, then smiled, "I do." Jamie beamed. "Then I pronounce you super married." Applause. Not from a crowd. Just Angela from the diner, a few neighbors, and the barista who always wrote Queen M on Maya's coffee cup. Later that night, when the cake was crumbs and Jamie was asleep on the couch, Maya stood in the kitchen with Ethan, barefoot, slow dancing to no music. "You know," she whispered, "we never really had a first dance." "This counts," he said, "everything we missed, counts now." She nodded. Not teary, just full. The next morning, Maya went back to the diner. Not as a waitress. Not as the girl from the scandal. But as Maya Reyes. Mother. Wife. Writer. She walked through the door and someone clapped. Just one. Then another. Until the whole room stood. Angela pulled her into a hug. "You coming back to work?" she joked. Maya smiled. "Only part-time, I've got a book to write." That night, Jamie crawled into bed beside them again. Same spot. Same comfort. He whispered, "Now that we're a real family, can I ask for something?" Maya smiled, "Anything." He looked up at them, eyes serious. "Can we get a dog?" Ethan burst out laughing. Maya nodded. "Only if you pick the name." Jamie grinned. "I already did, his name's Lucky." They laughed. And held each other close. No headlines. No spotlights. Just a love story that finally got to breathe. In the quiet. In the light. Exactly where it belonged. This is the end of our story. Thank you for tuning in.